Hey folks, Colin here from Something's Recording, and today I've got another quick tip for you on adding some extra attack and emphasizing the attack on your snare drum using a gate. Okay, so first off, let me say I despise gates, like a lot. I never use gates on my drums, never on the way in, never afterwards. I hate using a gate to get rid of bleed. It feels like it chokes the drum to me. I never like how they come in. I can never get the attack and release set right on my gate. It always chokes off the drum. It feels like it shortens the drum too much. So I never use gates. I will always go in by hand and get rid of bleed just to avoid gates. But in this instance, this is a pretty cool way to use a gate to emphasize the attack on your snare drum and shorten it up a little bit, okay? So it's a little bit more snappy, a little bit more pokey, okay? So let me play you the snare drum as we started out with it, okay? So this is the normal snare drum, just a little bit of EQ on it, okay? Let me take the reverb off of it too. Okay, just a couple moves here on the EQ, just adding a little bit of low end beef, a little bit of air, a little bit of sizzle up on top, so we hear those snares a little bit more. So it's a pretty good sounding snare drum by itself, okay? But for this mix, I really wanted to emphasize that attack. I really wanted it to snap through a little bit more. So let me show you what we're doing with this gate. Okay, so I'm gonna pull up the gate here, we'll look at the settings, and then I will give you a before and after of what it sounds like with this gate in, okay? So we've got a little bit of a longer release set here, almost 800 milliseconds, okay? So we've got this huge space between our snare drum, so we don't need our release to be too short. We don't wanna choke off the drum here. Hold is all the way down, 1 millisecond. Our attack is all the way down, 0.05 milliseconds. We've got our reduction range set to -40. We've got our look ahead on, so we're not choking off the beginning of the drum. We're not choking off the transient, okay? That is usually what I fight on gates like this. But we're not getting rid of bleed. Notice there's no bleed, okay? So there's no bleed to get rid of on the snare drum. So we're actually going to use this gate to emphasize the attack, okay? So we're going to shorten up the back end of the drum so the attack pokes out a little bit more. The drum's a little bit more snappy, okay? So take a listen. Okay? One more time. So before, and then I'll kick it in. Shorter. It's snappier. Sounds like it hits a little bit harder, right? There's not as much resonance. The back end isn't as long, okay? Okay, it's a little bit subtle by itself. Let me show you what it sounds like in the entire drum mix. So we'll pull the rest of these snare drum elements on, take a listen to it with the snare drum, finished mix. So after our compression, after our saturation, after our limiter, that back end is way too much, okay? That's gonna take up way too much space in our drum mix, especially when we throw the reverb on. Listen. Now it's way too long, okay? So let me throw this gate on halfway through, and you can hear how it emphasizes that attack, that beginning transient, and shortens up our snare drum so it's a lot more snappy, okay? Notice how it tightens up our drum. It's almost like it's got a different tuning on it. We don't have that weird low-end ring that happens after the fact. It's a lot tighter, a lot snappier, and it's really going to poke through the mix now, okay? So let's take a listen in context with the whole drum mix, okay? So here's before. Hear the difference? So for a faster song like this, we really need the snare to be, and that's it, okay? We don't want it to hang around the whole time, okay? So listen when we've got it off. The snare drum doesn't fit with this drum mix, okay? It doesn't fit the song, it doesn't fit the vibe. It hangs around way too long. Now listen. It's a lot more aggressive, a lot more snappy. It sits right with that kick drum. Now we'll do it with the reverb on. Hear how it changes the low end of the snare drum as well in the reverb? So here's without. That low end resonance sticks around way too long. So we're using our gate here to tighten up our snare drum sound. So we're just pulling the release back a little bit, getting rid of that resonance that sticks around, those weird low end resonances. We're kind of changing the tuning a little bit, okay? We're making the snare drum a little bit more snappy. It hits a lot harder and it sits better in a more aggressive drum mix like this, okay? Thank you guys so much for watching. If you need help mixing your drums to sound this aggressive, click the link in the description, head on over to somethingsrecording.com and request a quote for your next mix. I will see you guys soon in the next video.